I have a very dynamic duo here with me for classical conversations today. Ofra Harnoy and Mike Herriott are exceptional and highly acclaimed cello and trumpet performers, and they've put their efforts together to record several albums at this point, the most recent of which is called Portrait, an album of arias and duets. So we have the pleasure of learning more about that today. Ofra and Mike, welcome to both of you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
So one thing I think our listeners would love to know, that in addition to each having your own individual award-winning discographies, you're also a married couple making music together. And that is a really special thing.
Yeah, coming up on 4 years.
Wow, congratulations. So would you mind, or would you be willing to share with us the story of how you two met and how your love story unfolded?
Well, we actually met when we were 16 and 17 and fell madly in love. Mike was visiting in Toronto with his family, and we were at a concert together. Mm-hmm. And it was such an instant connection that when he went back to Newfoundland, where he was living at the time, we started writing letters. This is way before emails and texts and all of that. So
you couldn't even phone because you get in trouble for using long distance.
Yeah. So we were writing these long letters and really got to know each other through these letters, like, 12-page letters, and really enjoyed getting to know each other that way. And we actually decided we were madly in love, and Mike was actually going to move to Toronto to go to U of T, and we had all these plans, and then dun dun dun, a person came into our life and sabotaged our relationship, and we each thought the other one had done something horrible, and we lost contact for 35 years. And then I get a Facebook friend request, and I thought, oh, it's that horrible guy. And I thought, let bygones be bygones, and we decided to meet for lunch just to kind of catch up and be adults. And we both had marriages with kids and unsuccessful, whatever, but we decided to just meet for lunch. And during that lunch, within the first 5 minutes, we realized what had happened 35 years before, and it was like the glass shattered, and we haven't been apart a day since. And we do everything together. We work together in the studio, we perform together, we cook, we work out, we're inseparable.
Yeah.
So it's great.
What a story of some crazy twists and turns.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that you wrote all those letters to each other, though. That's beautiful.
It's a great way to know each other, like to get to know each other.
Absolutely.
We have a much longer version, more detailed version of that story, but it takes a lot longer.
You got
the
very
expurgated version.
Yeah.
Do you still have all those letters?
Unfortunately, we don't, because I had all my letters and a bunch of things in an apartment that I lived in Toronto. When I was on tour, there was a flood in the storage room, and everything I had got destroyed. And I think my
stuff just didn't survive the movings of. After I moved out of the house and I left all my stuff, kind of my bedroom intact, and then the house was sold and nothing survived that process.
It would be wonderful to have those letters, but
we have each other. So, which is better. Yeah,
for sure. That's the important thing. I'm glad you found your way back to each other. So what is it like performing with a loved one as opposed to a professional acquaintance?
Well, when we first tried playing together, and I'd never worked with a trumpet player before, and we tried, we just for fun, we picked up our instruments and we decided to try to play together. We were amazed at, first of all, how the two instruments sounded great together, and also the incredible musical connection that we had. Like, we really felt the same way about music. And people say that when they see us in concert, it's like this amazing connection. It's like we fuse into this one thing that creates music, and it's very natural and very organic, and
we discovered that very early on.
That
we love playing music together. Plus, you don't have to pay for 2 hotels rooms when you bring us in for a concert.
Oh, that's a nice bonus.
Very actually nice. A cool thing is, one of the first pieces we ever played together was The Summertime, which is on this Portrait album.
That's and it's the last track on the album.
Yeah. Ooh, interesting. I will definitely be curious to hear more about that. So you've made amazing use of your 4 years together so far. You've already recorded 2 albums before this, I understand, right?
Yes.
Back to Bach and On the Rock, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So before we talk about Portrait, could you just remind us about what the music was on those 2 albums?
Well, Back to Bach was kind of a revisiting of some of the earlier Baroque music that Ofra had done early on in her career in the 1980s. And it was, we originally thought, well, you know, there's like a beautiful Handel sonata on there that we thought, well, that would sound great with organ. But in putting ideas of how we were going to kind of, you know, work out the logistics of recording all this stuff, I said, well, you know what? I've done a lot of multi-tracking with brass, overdubbing or multi-tracking, doing brass section tracking for clients, for movies and TV and recording artists and whatnot. And so I thought, what if we approach the brass choir? So I'll record all the instruments of the brass choir one at a time, and we can make that into the brass choir into the sound of like an organ. And so that was kind of the starting seed for how we approached that album. And then there was another piece that we were going to do with cello and harpsichord, and we had rented a harpsichord and brought it into our house. And
It was a disaster.
I used to work with, my dad used to make musical instruments, and so like harpsichords and whatnot. And so I helped him with that. So I knew how to work. I can tune a harpsichord, I could fix the plectra, and I can, you know, work on the keyboard and make sure everything was in it. And this thing was beyond my help.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of coming down to a deadline with the album. We had about a week left to get everything recorded. And Ofra said, well, what if I record all the different parts of the accompaniment on the cello? So she recorded, like, I did it as a string quartet, and we got the violin parts.
I did them way up high on the cello, like in the top of the fingerboard.
It looks like she's bending over to tie her shoelaces when she's playing that far up on the fingerboard. And so she did all the violin, viola, and cello parts.
And that actually started this whole thing of us doing all this multi-tracking, and this has carried on into our other albums.
Yeah.
And it was my first time multi-tracking when I did the Back to Bach album.
Yeah,
and it sounded great.
Yeah, and when we started working on because we moved to Newfoundland in 2019 or 2018.
2018. Yeah.
And bought a house there. We decided we wanted to move away from Toronto and kind of go somewhere where we could be near an airport, but have lots of nature around us. And so when we moved there, we were checking out, because I grew up there, but Ofra was really excited to check out a lot of the Newfoundland music and the culture. And so we actually enlisted the assistance of a friend of ours who was a member of the great Newfoundland band called Great Big Sea. Bob Hallett. He came along and kind of helped us choose a selection of music. And so we did a lot of it. We had some guests come in, Alan Doyle and Heather Bambrick, and some great Newfoundland singers come in and sing with us on the album.
We actually did a little road trip to kind of get a feeling, you know, going to little pubs and hear people sing. And I constantly during that road trip was playing tracks of all the different Newfoundland music. So we also did we did our own. Yeah, we did a lot of research.
It was tough coming like narrowing it down to the list that we did end up with. But I think it's a nice mix, a nice balance of some of the faster kind of fiddle tunes and some of the broad Newfoundland ballads and
I got to learn how to do fiddling on the cello, which I never done before.
Which is really hard because you're all the way up on the fingerboard as opposed to like on the violin, you're just first position, second position kind of thing, you know. So
the cool thing was we were very, very lucky that all our guests recorded their tracks in December, because we were away for over 6 weeks traveling, both touring and we had a vacation, and we came back March, what was it? March 14th of 2020. Everything shut down, and we basically had all this time now to do everything else on that album. So that was like our COVID project.
We were scheduled to have 6 weeks upon our return to Newfoundland in March. We were scheduled to have 6 weeks before we had to go on tour again. So that was that was the time limit we had to record this entire album. And I guess the silver lining was that with everything got canceled, so we had all this time to work on the album and get it really kind of and nurture it and get it exactly where we wanted. And we were really pleased with the results of that.
Yeah.
And then, then we came up with the idea for this album to do some songs that we like to sing while we're cooking, kind of thing. It's
Yes, I can hear the passion in your voices as you're talking about these projects. I can understand all the creativity that's gone into that, and a lot of quick thinking too, and problem solving along the way.
yeah.
Well,
That's so
actually,
interesting.
one of the things that the listeners might love to check out is during this time that we were working on all these projects in the studio during COVID, we would take one day a week off and decide on a theme, whatever it was. Like we'd have an Italian night, we'd put opera on, dress up and cook Italian meals, but sometimes we'd make goofy videos. And a lot of these are on
That's
our
so
YouTube,
fun.
on actually it's my
Yes,
YouTube
the
channel.
Ofra Harnoy YouTube, official YouTube channel, something like that.
So we made some really cool videos that listeners might want to check out. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll make a mental note for sure. That sounds so
Yeah.
fun. Well, okay, so we're up to date then. Let's talk about Portrait. So why is it called Portrait, and how did you make your selections for this album?
Well, it's kind of funny. We were there's a friend of ours who's an artist in New York City, Vivian Reese, and she's
Amazing artist. Yeah.
she's sold great works all around the world, and about 30 years ago she painted a portrait. Ofra sat for her and she painted her,
A
and
giant, like full wall.
yeah, it's a
portrait of me.
very big portrait. And Vivian invited us over to her house when we were in New York. I guess it was probably maybe a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah.
And we went in there and we saw the portrait. We hadn't seen it before in her house, but she had put it up and we saw it on the wall, and kind of thought, wow, that would make a great album cover, And as the album idea started kind of coming together, we realized that it was apropos because of this album is almost like a portrait of our folly, our guilty pleasures in music, where the things that we like to listen to when we're not working on whatever concertos and all this other sorts of stuff, and the songs that we find fun, the stuff we love from our favorite operas and musical theater and that kind of stuff. So it was from that the whole thing kind of came together, and the idea of having the portrait on the with me with my horn kind of staring at it,
Looking at the painting. But the thing is, our list of both our loves of song was so long, it was really hard to narrow it down. But I think we got a nice balance of some things where it's just the two of us and it's a very intimate feeling, and things with almost a jazz, like Gershwin and Bernstein, and then some very serious opera arias that everyone is familiar with that we did with almost full orchestras, which is done by the H&H Studio Orchestra, which is
H&H.
We're doing all the
see.
parts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it now. H&H.
Exactly. Yeah, a little cryptic there, but
Yeah.
But yeah, so that some of I think one of the tracks, "Make Our Garden Grow" from Candide, has I think 113 instruments on it, because Ofra did many first violin parts on the cello, and then many second, because we really want to have a big orchestra sound. And so we're, for each one, you imagine an orchestra with 12 first violins. Well, she's playing for each of those people. She records each track as if it's an individual person.
Yeah, it's hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours in the studio, but when you hear it come together, it's magnificent.
Yeah,
I love
especially
that.
the way Ron Searles, he's our mixing engineer. He uses the Dolby Atmos surround sound technology. So there's actually 11 points of sound source in his studio, and he creates this audio image of the orchestra being all around. And
That's amazing. If I close my eyes, I can actually, hear where each musician is sitting in the orchestra.
yeah.
He creates it. It's so realistic.
So for streaming, this is like a new thing on Apple Spatial and Tidal, Amazon HD, and all those high definition streaming platforms. You can actually put on a pair of headphones and hear this recording technique, this mixing technique. You can hear the music all around you, and it really kind of immerses you in the experience of the ensemble.
And in one of the tracks, the Lenski's aria, it's this tenor standing on stage singing this beautiful love aria, and And the way the sound is created is almost like he's standing on the stage, the cello sound being the tenor, and then it sounds like the orchestra is in the pit, like they would be at an actual opera. So if you close your eyes, it actually feels like that's what you're
It's great
experiencing.
being able to have that flexibility where you can create a real sort of sound image.
Wow, what an incredible listening experience it sounds like. It's really interesting that we get, I feel like I don't hear the cello trumpet combo very often as a duo. And I saw, Mike, that you arranged a lot of these pieces yourself. What are some of the, I guess, ways that you played to the strengths of the instruments and to both of you as performers as you were arranging them?
Well,
You did all the arrangements.
I did all the arrangements
Except
for this one,
summertime.
except for
Yeah,
summertime.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all about musical colors. You're generating. It's just like with a palette of actual colors. You're creating brightness and darkness and various shades in between. And so for that, for any of these sounds that you want to blend together, there's an instrument somewhere in our house that can create that,
Mike plays so many instruments. It's fantastic. I mean,
well, we've got enough brass instruments in our house that we could probably do the plumbing for a large condo development, but for me, it's all a matter of blending colors and shades together and creating shapes that make the music kind of come through as in its best form, I guess. So the short form of that is I try to make it sound good.
And I think you succeeded at that for sure. I got a little sneak preview of it, and it sounds incredible.
Thank you.
Before we go, I was wondering, one thing I love about sharing music with my friends and family is those moments in pieces where you think, I can't wait for them to hear this, like the climax, or there's a mic drop moment, or maybe there's a really funny or intimate moment, whatever it is, there's a moment that I can't wait to share. And would you say there are a few musical moments that stand out to you in this album as, sections that you just are so excited for your listeners to hear?
Oh, absolutely. I think the huge sound of "Make Our Garden Grow" and Ofra's cadenza in that is that's one of the moments that, for me, that really excites me. But I also love the intimacy of Panis Angelicus in Summertime. So it's, and for us, I mean, we've heard all the music on this album many, many, many times because we've been mixing and editing and doing all kinds of stuff. But listening to the final product, I think there's something in every track that kind of sticks out for me. And I guess it should, because that was our intention. So
yeah. And I mean, Mike did some really, really cool things in the arrangements that I didn't even expect. I mean, in Somewhere, I think he came up with a very original idea of starting it. And that always kind of, every time I hear it, it almost startles me in a good way. Like, wow, I can't believe that sound.
Well, I think anyone who's a Star Trek fan would recognize that I'm a Star Trek fan with how I started the arrangement of Somewhere. And I was kind of thinking of Somewhere, like somewhere out there, somewhere other than here kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I had that. But
he created this mysterious kind of sound before the actual melody comes in. And it's really quite something. I really enjoy listening to that. Again, we always have to kind of remove ourselves after working on a project for a while and not hear it, and then we come back to it and go, oh yeah, it sounds good, because you get so saturated with all the little bits and pieces.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm making it sounds like there are just so many details that have gone into this, and all the different tracks and everything. What a huge project. We've gotten a really nice introduction to Portrait. Now all we have to do is go listen to it. I'm Mary Claire Murphy, and I have been speaking today with Ofra Harnoy and Mike Herriott about their new album called Portrait. It's an album of arias and duets that they love. You can check it out on CDs, online through lots of different platforms, and even on vinyl. So it's definitely something to add to the library. Mike and Ofra, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks for having us, Mary Claire.